There comes a moment when a man's spirit begins to break, when the world goes silent and he realizes no one is coming to save him. That moment is sacred, because what you do next defines everything. Most will give up, most will kneel to despair, but a rare few will whisper one word to themselves, a word that carried a broken nation through ashes, a word that turned ordinary men into unshakable spirits. Ganbaru, to endure beyond pain, to persist without promise, to move even when movement feels impossible. Centuries ago, after the fall of his clan, a lone samurai named Ryojin wandered the mountains of Kyushu. His armor was shattered, his blade chipped and dull, his name erased from history. For years he had fought for lords who now lay in the dirt. His brothers were gone, his village burned, his purpose extinguished. The war had ended, but the silence that followed was louder than battle. And in that silence, he began to rot. He tried to rebuild, to find work, to plant rice, to live like other men. But every night he woke drenched in sweat, haunted by the sound of steel and screams that no longer existed. He whispered to the gods, "Why was I spared?" But there was no answer. Only wind, only emptiness. One freezing night, starving and delirious, Ryojin saw a faint glow between the pines. Each step cracked the snow, each breath cut like glass. He reached a crooked hut, smoke leaking through its roof, the smell of iron and pine resin heavy in the air. Inside, an old swordsmith hammered steel in silence. Sparks danced like ghosts and died on the floor. Without looking up, the man said, "If you've come to die, die outside. If you've come to live, start by chopping wood." Ryojin hesitated, then picked up an axe. The first swing numbed his arms, the next tore his hands. Blood streaked the handle, but he kept striking until dawn broke over a pile of split logs. The old man stepped out, expression unreadable. "You are not finished." "Return tomorrow." Ryojin wanted to curse him, but instead he nodded. For the first time in months, his heartbeat had purpose. He came back the next day and the next. The sound of the axe became prayer. Pain replaced despair. And in that rhythm, without reward, without words, something within him shifted. He stopped asking why. He simply endured. That night, the forge's glow became the light of his rebirth. The swordsmith's name was Kenshu. He had once forged blades for generals, but war had taken his family and left him alone with fire and silence. He spoke little. He worked, and Ryojin followed. Days bled into weeks. They melted steel, hammered until their arms trembled, quenched the blades, and began again. Each strike was a heartbeat, each spark, a memory of what they'd both lost. Ryojin stopped asking questions. The forge became his prayer hall, the hammer his confession. One evening, as snow drifted past the open door, Kenshu finally spoke. "You chop wood without purpose. You hammer without knowing why. Yet still you return." Ryojin nodded. "If I stop, I will die." The old man smiled faintly. "Then you've already begun to live. Do you know the word Ganbaru?" Ryojin shook his head. "It means to persist beyond reason, to keep walking when the path has ended. We do not fight to win, boy. We fight so that effort itself becomes our prayer." The words sank into Ryojin's bones. The fire roared. For the first time, he felt not like a soldier, but like a man being reforged. That night, under the hiss of steel and water, he whispered the word to himself. Ganbaru. The days blurred together. Morning became night, and Ryojin no longer counted either. He rose with the first light, stoked the coals, and swung the hammer until his breath grew ragged. The pain in his shoulders became familiar, almost comforting. Each strike erased a memory of failure. Each spark reminded him that he was still alive. Ganbaru was not glory. It was repetition without applause, motion without audience. It was a man shaping himself one blow at a time. The mountain became his master. The wind taught him patience. The fire taught him pain. The silence taught him to hear the truth. No one was coming. It was up to him. Sometimes at night he caught his reflection in the polished steel. He barely recognized the eyes staring back, calmer, colder, no longer haunted. The soldier who had once begged for death was gone. In his place stood a craftsman forged by endurance. He began to understand. The purpose of pain was not punishment, it was purification. When the fire burned hottest and the hammer rang loudest, he felt it. A stillness deeper than peace, the kind only found by those who refuse to stop. Seasons passed and the mountain grew quiet. One morning the forge was cold. Ryojin found Kenshu lying on his mat, the fire in his eyes dim but steady. "The time has come," the old man whispered. "You've learned what I cannot teach." Ryojin knelt beside him, his voice cracked. "I've learned nothing. I still feel weak. I still don't understand." Kenshu's lips curled into a faint smile. "Good. Then you finally see clearly. Strength is not the absence of weakness. It is the will to move with it." He reached beside him and lifted a sword wrapped in cloth. When Ryojin unrolled it, the steel shimmered like frozen moonlight. "This is your spirit, hammered from every strike, every scar. Do not wield it for pride. Wield it for persistence." Ryojin tried to speak, but Kenshu's hand touched his chest, a final gesture heavy with peace. "Remember, the fire was never outside you." The old man exhaled softly, and the mountain fell silent again. Ryojin bowed, pressing his forehead to the floor. He did not weep. He only whispered the word that now carried the weight of both their lives. Ganbaru. Ryojin buried Kenshu at the foot of the mountain. He placed the master's hammer beside the grave and bowed until his forehead touched the earth. The wind carried no words, only the slow breath of the world continuing without them. For a long while he stood there, the sword at his side, feeling both hollow and whole. The mountain had taken his pain, melted it, and returned it as purpose. When he finally descended, spring was breaking through the snow. The villages below were scarred by hunger and time. Houses leaned, roofs sagged, men and women worked with dull eyes. Ryojin said nothing. He built fires where cold had crept in. He repaired broken carts, sharpened old tools, forged new blades for farmers instead of warriors. He charged little, often nothing. No one asked his name, but they saw the way he moved, slow, deliberate, unshakable. How his eyes never wavered, how his hands never trembled, even when storms rolled through the valley. They began to call him the man who endured. Children whispered his legend around their fires. Adults bowed when he passed, but Ryojin only smiled faintly, for he knew the truth. There was no miracle in what he'd done, only Ganbaru, the sacred act of not stopping. Years passed, the valley changed, and so did Ryojin. The villagers grew older, the fields greener, but the rhythm of his hammer never slowed. He no longer forged weapons, he forged continuity. Every strike was a reminder that life, no matter how cruel, must go on. Ganbaru, he realized, was not about strength. It was about consistency in the face of chaos. To keep your rhythm when the world loses its own. To hold your breath when everything around you gasps for air. When storms tore through the valley, he worked through the rain. When the harvest failed, he repaired the tools and started again. He had no master, no family, no reason left. But he had Ganbaru. It was no longer a word. It was a state of being, a silent vow between man and existence. And as the seasons turned endlessly around him, he understood what Kenshu had meant. Endurance isn't resistance. It's surrender with purpose. The world did not reward him with riches, but with peace. The kind found only by those who have walked through fire and learned to love the burn. Centuries have passed, but Ryojin's war never ended. It just changed form. Today our battlefields are quieter. No steel, no banners, no armies. Only rooms lit by cold screens, only minds fighting against noise, fatigue, and doubt. Your war isn't waged with swords. It's fought in silence. At 3 a.m., when the world sleeps and you stare at the ceiling, asking yourself if any of this still makes sense. It's in the mornings when your body aches but you train anyway. In the hours you work when no one claps. In the rejections, the failures, the invisible progress, that is your mountain. That is your forge. And you too are being tempered. Ganbaru lives here. in the unseen. It's what separates those who want change from those who become it. Most men quit because they think pain means they're off course. But pain is the compass. It's the direction that leads you to growth. The moment you accept that truth, life stops breaking you and starts shaping you. Remember this, the weight you carry now isn't meant to crush you, it's meant to carve you. The fire you walk through today will become the light that guides you tomorrow. There will come a day when everything inside you goes silent. No anger, no drive, no hope, only the dull echo of exhaustion. That is the border between who you were and who you're meant to become. Most turn back there. They think emptiness means the end, but emptiness is only the clearing before rebirth. Ryojin once stood in that same silence, staring into the forge long after the fire had died. And he realized the truth. The flame was never in the fire. It was in him. You will face that moment too, when no one believes in you, when even you stop believing in yourself, and you'll have a choice, to retreat into comfort or to walk forward through the dark. Ganbaru is choosing forward, not because it's easy, but because there is no other path worth walking. Every step through pain reshapes you. Every breath through doubt renews you. Every refusal to quit rewrites your fate. So when the silence comes, don't resist it. Listen. You will hear it, the faint sound beneath despair, the same rhythm that once echoed in a mountain forge, the sound of persistence, the heartbeat of Ganbaru. That's the moment you are reborn. There's a saying among monks of the old mountains, when the body breaks, the spirit begins. So let the body break, let the mind scream, let the world doubt, but move. One step, then another, because that's how legends are built, not in firelight, but in the cold hours no one sees. When you want to quit, whisper it softly. Ganbaru. When you're exhausted and unseen, Ganbaru. When the dream collapses and you stand in the ashes, Ganbaru. You don't need motivation, you don't need permission, you just need persistence. The storm will pass, the pain will fade, but what you build through endurance, that stays. So take another breath. Grip the invisible sword and walk the 1,000-mile road, because you are not weak, you are simply unfinished. Ganbaru. Endure beyond pain, rise of the dark.